Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring some really fascinating concepts from ancient yogic philosophy, specifically from Sri Aurobindo's The Synthesis of Yoga. We'll be talking about the idea of a triple life and the potential for unveiling the spirit within. Pretty intriguing stuff, right?
Definitely sounds like it.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking. Now, before we jump in, I just want to remind everyone that this is a deep dive, so we're going to be going pretty in-depth into the source material here. And as always, we encourage you to do your own exploration as well. All right, so let's get started. Sri Aurobindo, in his book, The Synthesis of Yoga, he talks about this concept of a triple life. Have you ever considered that there might be more to us than just our physical bodies and thoughts?
It's a question that's been around for ages, really. Philosophers and mystics, they've been pondering this for centuries. What is the true nature of the self? Sure, Aurobindo takes this question a step further. He suggests we have a veiled spiritual being inside us, but he's not talking about some separate soul off in some ethereal realm, but rather an intrinsic part of ourselves, intertwined with both our physical and mental existence.
So it's more like discovering a hidden dimension within us than something that's external.
Exactly. And the exciting part is that this isn't just some abstract concept. Sri Aurobindo lays out actual paths we can use to unveil this spiritual dimension, practices designed to help us experience this deeper reality for ourselves.
And that's where the different paths of yoga come in, right? Like I've tried some yoga myself, mostly focusing on physical postures and breath work. But what I find really fascinating is this idea that ancient yogis, they believed that practices like Hatha yoga could actually allow them to defy gravity. Could you imagine, a world where we could manipulate gravity through yoga?
It definitely makes you think about the limits of what we think is possible, right? It challenges our modern scientific understanding, but that's what's so captivating about Sri Aurobindo. He blends these ancient traditions with a modern philosophical approach. These ancient Hatha yogis, they saw the body not just as a physical vessel, but as a vehicle for awakening all these potent energies. It's like refining and purifying the body to tap into this hidden power source, one we may not even know we have.
It's way more than just stretching. It almost feels like a bridge between the physical and the spiritual.
And that's where Raja Yoga comes in. It takes some things from Hatha Yoga, like the postures, the breath work, but simpler. The focus of Raja Yoga is on calming the mind, achieving higher states of consciousness through meditation and discipline, mental discipline. And have you heard of Kundalini, that coiled energy? Raja Yoga wants to awaken that force, leading to some pretty intense spiritual experiences.
It's interesting. Each path kind of has its own approach to the same goal, one through mastering the body, the other through mastering the mind. But then Sri Aurobindo also talks about a triple path. What's that all about?
The triple path, it's an integrated approach, you could say. It's about devotion, knowledge, and selfless action. It's about aligning your intellect, your heart, your will towards something bigger than yourself, towards in the divine, some might say. Sri Aurobindo emphasizes the role of sacred texts, or the teachings from a guru, really highlighting the power of the word in this self-discovery journey.
It sounds like it's about using all parts of who we are, not just the physical or mental.
Yeah, exactly. And it's natural to wonder, what's the point of all this? What good is it to unveil this spiritual side? Well, Sri Aurobindo says that by doing so, we tap into a new level of human potential. He calls it the Superman, but don't picture capes and tights.
Huh. That's exactly what I was picturing.
It's more about breaking free from the limitations we usually think of as human. It's not rejecting our humanity, but refining it, evolving it, connecting to a source of infinite potential. Like, imagine accessing levels of awareness and ability most people just dream of.
It's an inspiring thought, but honestly, it also sounds a little bit daunting. Are there challenges along the way?
Of course there are. Sri Aurobindo, he doesn't try to hide the difficulties. One of the biggest is our own ego. That part of us that wants to stay comfortable, stay with what's familiar, even if it holds us back. And let's face it, sometimes we chase things thinking they're spiritually fulfilling, but really it's just our desires and ego in disguise. It's like climbing the wrong mountain thinking it's Mount Everest.
So being able to tell the difference is key, right? We need to figure out what's really guiding us toward this spiritual unveiling and what's just our ego wanting attention.
That's it, and that's just the beginning. One of the most interesting parts of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy is this concept of integral yoga.
Oh, I've heard of integral yoga, but I'm not sure I really understand it. Is it just another style of yoga?
It's more of an overall approach, I'd say. You see, a lot of spiritual paths want you to leave the material world behind to reach enlightenment. But integral yoga is about transforming every part of yourself, your body, your mind, and your spirit. Sri Aurobindo believes that transforming our daily experiences can infuse them with spiritual meaning.
So it's not about escaping from life, but about finding the spiritual dimension within life.
Exactly. Have you ever thought of something as simple as eating as a spiritual act?
Well, I'll admit, my breakfast usually involves more coffee and checking the news than spiritual reflection.
Huh. Well, Sri Aurobindo says that even enjoying a meal can be a sacred act. It's a way to consecrate even the simple parts of our day. That's what's so practical about integral yoga. It's not about running away from the world. It's about changing it from the inside out.
That really makes sense to me. But how do we actually make these changes happen? It all feels a bit overwhelming.
Well, Sri Aurobindo talks about the importance of surrender, letting a higher power work through us. He uses this term Divine Shakti to describe this universal force that starts and drives our transformation. But it's not about being passive. It's about actively aligning ourselves with this force and letting it guide our evolution.
So it's like we need to make the effort, but then let go and trust the process, right? How do we find that balance?
It is like a dance. We work hard on our practices, on understanding ourselves better, on making better choices. But then we have to surrender, to let go of that need to control everything. Think about learning to surf. You paddle hard to catch the wave, but then you have to trust the wave and let it carry you.
I really like that analogy. It shows how we need both effort and surrender to move forward on this path. Earlier, you talked about the higher mind, a concept Sri Aurobindo discusses. What exactly is that, and how does it fit in with this idea of transformation?
Have you ever felt like you were stuck overthinking something, going back and forth in your mind without finding a solution? That's our regular mind doing its thing, limited by logic and old patterns. Sri Aurobindo suggests there's a higher mind, a faculty that goes beyond our everyday reasoning. It's not about becoming a genius at math or anything.
So we wouldn't all become human calculators then.
Ha! Not necessarily. Think of it more like tapping into intuition and insights. Like instead of struggling with the problem, you just get it instantly. Or imagine learning a new language in a flash. That's kind of what the higher mind is like.
I love that image, and I can see how the higher mind fits into this evolutionary jump Sri Aurobindo talks about. It's like we need to reach this higher awareness to even understand what this Superman could be.
That's exactly right. And remember all that talk about the ego and its challenges. The higher mind helps us see beyond those limitations. It gives us a broader perspective, a clearer view of what's truly important.
And speaking of expanding our perspective, Sri Aurobindo also mentions this idea of a supramental sense. Is he saying we could develop new senses, like being able to see auras or something?
Well, it might be possible, but the supramental sense is more about experiencing a wider range of realities. Our normal five senses, they give us a limited view of the world. Imagine being able to perceive subtle energies that flow through everything, the way it's all connected. It's like opening up to a whole new dimension of experience.
Sounds like a big change in how we see things. But if we can access this expanded reality, wouldn't our normal human experiences seem kind of, well, boring?
That's where things get really interesting. Sri Aurobindo isn't about escaping from the world, but rather about changing it, bringing this expanded awareness into every part of our lives. Even something simple like eating a meal could become a deeper experience.
So it's about finding the divine in the everyday, seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary.
You got it. It's about seeing the world as a reflection of the divine play, this tapestry of interconnectedness and beauty. And when we look at life that way, even the most simple tasks can have meaning and purpose.
I'm noticing a theme here. It's not about rejecting our humanness, it's about elevating it. It's about bridging that gap between our earthly experience and this spiritual dimension we have inside us. But to be honest, reaching this level of transformation sounds really hard. Like, where do we even begin?
Sri Aurobindo reminds us that the journey begins with ourselves, with our own inner change. And he's clear that it's not just about understanding Athiyas, it's about a fundamental shift in our being.
So it's not enough to just read books and understand the ideas. We need to actually live these principles.
That's right. It's about aligning our will with the divine will, letting the transformative power of Shakti work through us. It's about surrendering to something greater than ourselves and trusting the process.
And he also talks about the importance of faith, right? Especially when we face those inevitable challenges and setbacks along the way.
Faith is key, absolutely. It's that unshakable belief in our ability to transform, even when things are tough. It's like that saying, leap and the net will appear. We have to trust that we will be supported on this path.
I'm starting to see why Sri Aurobindo's work has resonated with so many. It's like a roadmap to personal evolution and spiritual awakening, but it's not all easy. He recognizes the difficulties, like the ego fighting change, old habits being hard to break, and the possibility of making wrong turns.
He's very realistic about those obstacles, but he gives guidance on how to navigate them. He emphasizes how important it is to be able to discern, to tell the difference between the ego's whispers and the guidance of our higher self.
So it's not about blindly following a path. It's about developing the inner wisdom to make conscious choices.
Exactly. And we cultivate this wisdom through self-reflection, being honest with ourselves, and being willing to learn from our mistakes. It's a continuous process of refining ourselves, shedding old layers of conditioning to reveal the true self underneath.
And this process of unveiling, it's not always easy, right? There might be times of struggle, times of doubt, times when we feel lost.
Absolutely. But he assures us that these challenges are part of the process. They're opportunities to grow and to purify ourselves. Remember, we're not alone on this journey. The Divine Shakti is always there, guiding and supporting us, even when we don't realize it.
It's like having a cosmic GPS, always recalculating the route, even when we take detours.
And as we keep moving forward, our perception of reality starts to shift. Sri Aurobindo talks about experiencing the world as a manifestation of the divine, seeing the interconnectedness of everything, and feeling a sense of unity with all beings.
It's as if that veil of separation starts to disappear, revealing the underlying oneness of everything.
And with that realization comes a profound sense of peace, joy, and freedom from the limitations of the ego.
It's like we're finally coming home to ourselves, to our true nature.
And that homecoming, it's not just something personal, it's cosmic. Sri Aurobindo envisions a future where all of humanity can evolve to this higher consciousness, creating a world of harmony, peace, and divine realization.
That's a powerful vision. But I'm curious, how does this transformation affect our actions in the world? I mean, if we're experiencing this deep sense of unity and transcendence, does that mean we just withdraw from the world and become hermits?
That's a common misconception about spiritual paths, but Sri Aurobindo's vision is quite the opposite. He talks about how important it is to express the divine in the world, to bring that supramental consciousness into our actions, our relationships, and our creative endeavors.
So it's not about escaping the world, but about transforming it.
Exactly. It's about becoming instruments of the divine will, expressing that divine beauty, truth, and goodness in our lives.
And that expression can take many forms, right? It's not just about meditating in a cave or living a monastic life.
You're right. It can be anything. Creating art, building businesses, raising families. It's about bringing that supramental awareness into everything we do.
I'm starting to see how this philosophy can really empower us to live more meaningful lives. It's not about running from the world, but embracing it with all its challenges and opportunities and making it an expression of the divine.
And that's the core of Sri Aurobindo's message, I think. It's a call to action, an invitation to join this grand evolutionary adventure of consciousness.
It's like he's saying, hey, humans, you're capable of so much more than you realize. Wake up, step into your power, and let's create a world that reflects the divine potential inside each of us.
And that's a message that resonates with me deeply, and I hope it does with our listeners too. But there's one more part of Sri Aurobindo's teaching we haven't touched on yet, something that ties everything together.
Oh, what's that?
The concept of sacrifice, but not in the way we usually think of it.
Now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more.
It's more like, you know how we put effort into things, right? We work on our practices, we think about ourselves, try to make good choices, but then we also have to let go, surrender, stop needing to control everything. It's kind of like, imagine learning to surf. You paddle like crazy to catch the wave, but once you're up, you got to trust that wave to carry you.
I like that. It really shows how we need both the effort and the letting go to get where we're going on this path. You know, earlier we were talking about Sri Aurobindo's idea of the higher mind. Could you say a little more about what exactly that is and how it fits into this idea of transformation?
Okay, so picture this. You're stuck in your head, overthinking something, going around and getting nowhere, right? That's our ordinary mind at work. It's limited, stuck with logic and those old ways of thinking. Sri Aurobindo, he says we can tap into what he calls a higher mind, something beyond that everyday reasoning. Don't think like becoming a math whiz, though. That could be cool.
Haha, so we wouldn't all suddenly become human calculators.
Probably not. Think of it more as getting a boost of intuition and insight. Like, instead of struggling with a problem, you just suddenly get it, you know? Or imagine instantly understanding and speaking a new language. That's kind of the idea behind the higher mind.
Wow, that's a really powerful image. And I can see now how the higher mind could be a part of this evolution Sri Aurobindo talks about. Like, we need to access that higher level of awareness to even begin to grasp what this Superman could even be.
Exactly. And remember all that talk about the challenges of the ego? Well, the higher mind, it helps us see past those limits. It gives us that wider perspective, a clearer view of what really matters.
And while we're on the topic of seeing things differently, Sri Aurobindo also mentions this thing called supramental sense. Is he suggesting we could develop totally new senses, like the ability to see auras?
Well, maybe that's not completely out of the question, but the supramental sense, it's more about experiencing a wider range of realities. Think about it. Our regular five senses, they give us a pretty limited view of the world, don't they? Imagine being able to perceive those subtle energies that run through everything, the way it's all connected. It's like opening ourselves up to a whole new dimension of experience.
It sounds like a pretty radical shift in perception. But if we're able to experience this expanded reality, wouldn't all our normal human experiences feel, well, a bit dull in comparison?
That's what makes it so interesting, I think. Sri Aurobindo isn't advocating for escaping the world, but actually for changing it. He's talking about bringing this expanded awareness into every aspect of our lives. Even something as simple as eating could become a much deeper experience.
So it's about finding the divine within the ordinary, finding the extraordinary within the everyday, right?
Exactly. It's about seeing the world as a reflection of the divine, as this tapestry of interconnectedness and beauty. And when we start seeing life that way, even those simple, everyday things become filled with meaning and purpose.
I'm sensing a theme here. It's not about denying our humanness, but about raising it up. It's about bridging that gap between our earthly experience and this spiritual dimension that's within us. But to be honest, reaching this level of transformation seems like a pretty big task. Where do we even start?
Sri Aurobindo says it starts with us, with our own inner transformation. And he's very clear that it's not just about understanding the concepts intellectually, it's about a fundamental change in our being.
So it's not just about reading books and understanding the ideas. We actually need to live these principles.
That's right. It's about aligning our will with the divine will, letting the transformative power of the Shakti work through us. It's about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves and trusting that process.
He also emphasizes faith a lot, right? Especially when we face challenges and setbacks, which we all do.
Absolutely. Faith is essential. It's that unshakable belief in our own capacity for transformation, even when things get rough. It's like the saying, leap and the net will appear. We have to have that trust that we'll be supported.
I'm starting to see why Sri Aurobindo's work has spoken to so many people. It's like a roadmap for personal evolution and spiritual awakening. But it's not all sunshine and roses, is it? He acknowledges that there will be challenges like the ego-resisting change, old habits holding us back, and the possibility of taking wrong turns.
He's very real about those obstacles, but he also provides guidance on how to deal with them. He talks a lot about the importance of discernment, being able to distinguish between the whispers of the ego and the guidance of our higher self.
So it's not about following blindly, but about cultivating the inner wisdom to make conscious choices.
Yes, exactly. We develop that wisdom by looking inward, by being honest with ourselves, and by being willing to learn from our mistakes. It's a constant process of refining, shedding those old layers of conditioning so we can reveal the true self underneath.
And this unveiling process, it's not always comfortable, is it? There might be times of struggle, of doubt, of feeling lost and uncertain.
Absolutely, there will be. But he assures us that these challenges are all part of the process, that they're actually opportunities to grow and to become more pure. And it's important to remember we're not alone in this. The Divine Shakti is always there with us, guiding us and supporting us, even when we don't realize it.
It's like having a cosmic GPS system, always recalculating, even when we take those detours.
Exactly. And as we keep moving forward on this path, the way we see reality starts to shift. Sri Aurobindo talks about experiencing the world as this manifestation of the divine, seeing how everything is interconnected, and feeling a sense of unity with all beings.
It's like that separation we feel starts to fade away, and we see that underlying oneness of everything.
And with that realization comes this profound sense of peace, of joy, of liberation from the limitations of the ego.
It's like coming home to ourselves, to our true nature, finally.
And this homecoming isn't just an individual thing, it's cosmic. Sri Aurobindo envisions a future where humanity can evolve as a whole to this higher level of consciousness, creating a world of harmony and peace, of divine realization.
Well, that's a powerful vision. I'm curious, though, how does all this change how we act in the world? I mean, if we're experiencing this sense of unity and transcendence, does that mean we just withdraw from the world, become hermits?
That's a pretty common misconception about spiritual paths. But Sri Aurobindo's vision is the opposite. He actually emphasizes how important it is to express the divine in the world, to bring that supramental consciousness into everything we do, our actions, relationships, even our creative endeavors.
So it's not about escaping the world, but transforming it from within.
Exactly. It's about becoming instruments of that divine will, expressing divine beauty, truth, and goodness in all we do.
And that expression can take many forms, right? It doesn't have to be meditating in a cave or living as a monk.
Absolutely. It could be creating art, building businesses, raising families, anything really. The key is bringing that supramental awareness into everything.
I'm beginning to understand how this philosophy can really empower us to live more meaningful and fulfilling lives. It's not about running away from the world, but about embracing it with all the challenges and opportunities it offers and making it an expression of the divine.
And that, I think, is at the heart of Sri Aurobindo's message. It's a call to action, an invitation to participate in this grand evolutionary adventure of consciousness.
It's as if he's saying, hey, humans, you could be so much more than you think. Wake up, tap into your potential, and let's build a world that reflects the divine potential that's inside each of us.
That's a message that really resonates with me, and I hope it does with our listeners as well. But there's one piece of Sri Aurobindo's teachings we haven't discussed yet, something that brings it all together.
Oh, and what's that?
It's this concept of sacrifice, but not in the way we usually think about it.
Now I'm really curious. Tell me more.
When we think of sacrifice, it usually means giving something up, right? Like skipping dessert to be healthier or something. But I think Sri Aurobindo has a deeper meaning in mind.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, I have a feeling he's got something much more profound in mind than just giving up chocolate.
Exactly. He actually describes life itself as this ongoing sacrifice, but he's not talking about deprivation or suffering, not at all. Instead, it's about consciously offering every action, every thought, every breath even, to something bigger than ourselves.
So it's kind of like taking those everyday things, the mundane stuff, and turning them into acts of devotion.
Precisely. Imagine this. Instead of just mindlessly scrolling through social media, you could approach it with more awareness. Use it to connect with people in a positive way. Or think about turning your commute, that daily drive, into a kind of moving meditation, offering your focus and patience to all that traffic.
That's a perspective shift I could definitely benefit from. It's about being intentional, bringing awareness to our actions, turning those everyday tasks into something almost sacred.
And that's where the idea of seeing the divine in all things comes in. It's about recognizing that spark of divinity, not just in ourselves, but in everything and everyone around us. It's about feeling part of something much larger than just our individual selves.
You know, it reminds me of that quote, the universe is not outside of you. Look inside yourself. Everything that you want, you already are.
That's beautiful. It really captures the essence of this concept. But there's a crucial distinction Sri Aurobindo makes. It's easy to miss. We have to be careful not to confuse this feeling of connection with inflating our egos.
So it's not about thinking, oh, I'm so connected to the universe, I'm better than everyone else.
Exactly. It's not about ego boosting. It's actually about dissolving the ego completely. It's about realizing our true self isn't separate from the divine, that we're all part of this interconnected web of existence.
So it's about transcending the ego, not feeding it right.
Yes. And that's where true liberation comes in. Remember, Sri Aurobindo talks about an ascent of consciousness, a gradual purification and transformation of our being. He describes this unfolding process through various stages, one of which involves the emergence of what he calls the psychic being.
We talked about that a little bit before, but can you remind us what exactly he means by the psychic being?
Okay, think of it as the deepest, most genuine part of yourself, your soul essence. It's not something you create, it's already there. It's just that it gets covered up by all the mental clutter and conditioning we pick up throughout life. As we move forward on this path, the psychic's being starts to come forward and guide our journey.
So it's like having this inner compass pointing us towards our highest potential.
That's a great way to put it. Sri Aurobindo describes the psychic being as being completely oriented toward the divine. It seeks truth, beauty, love, strength, and it has this incredible ability to discern, to help us see the difference between what truly nourishes us and what's just distracting us from our path.
It sounds like having this wise and compassionate guide inside of us. But if we already have this inner compass, this psychic being, why do we even need to practice yoga or any other spiritual disciplines?
That's a really good question. Think of it this way. You might have a powerful, amazing sports car, but if you don't know how to drive it, it won't take you anywhere. And the practices of yoga, meditation, self-reflection, ethical living, they're like learning how to drive that sports car. They teach us how to access and express the full potential of our psychic being.
So they're like tools that help us refine and strengthen our connection to our true selves.
Exactly. And this brings us to something really fascinating and often misunderstood in Sri Aurobindo's teachings, divine love and Ananda.
I've always been intrigued by the idea of divine love, but it also feels so abstract, kind of hard to grasp. What does it actually mean to experience divine love?
It's different from romantic love or even in the love we feel for our families, although those can be reflections of it. Divine love is this transformative force that's woven into everything. It's unconditional, it's expansive, and it's freeing, but experiencing it in its purest form, that can be a challenge.
So it's not all rainbows and butterflies.
Haha, not always. Sri Aurobindo cautions against mistaking other, less refined types of love for the divine. Sometimes we get attached to the feeling of love itself, or we project our own desires and expectations onto others and call it love.
So how do we tell the difference between true divine love and these more ego-driven expressions?
That's where the psychic being comes in. As we deepen our connection to our true selves, we become more sensitive to the subtleties of divine love. We develop this refined sense of discernment that helps us separate what's truly nourishing from what's just feeding our ego.
It's like developing a more sophisticated taste for spiritual experiences. We're learning to tell the difference between a cheat imitation and the real deal.
That's a great way to put it. And this refinement process, it also applies to our relationship with our own minds. Sri Aurobindo talks about how important it is to free the soul from its attachment to that constant mental shatter.
He says those desires that come from craving and wanting things, they distort our perceptions.
Exactly. We get caught in this cycle of wanting, grasping, and never feeling satisfied. He really emphasizes the importance of recognizing that the mind, with all its thoughts and wants, isn't our true self. He calls the true self the Purusha, remember?
So it's about learning to watch our thoughts without getting carried away by them, to create some space between our awareness and all that mental noise.
Precisely. It's about cultivating that witness consciousness, that quiet observer inside us. And as we do this, something amazing starts to happen. Our consciousness begins to expand beyond the limits of the individual self. Sri Aurobindo calls this the realization of the cosmic self.
It's like going from feeling like a tiny drop in the ocean to realizing we are the entire ocean.
I love that. It's about experiencing oneness with everything that exists, feeling the interconnectedness of everything from the tiniest particle to the vastness of the cosmos.
So it's like returning to that sense of unity we discussed earlier, but on a much grander scale.
Exactly. Sri Aurobindo even suggests that we can start to see the universe as a manifestation of the divine within us.
That's pretty mind-blowing. They're like saying we have the entire universe within us.
And that brings us to this idea of the Brahman, the ultimate reality. Sri Aurobindo describes Brahman as being both passive and active, both transcendent and immanent.
Wait, so you're saying it's both beyond us and within us at the same time?
You got it. He says we need to experience both aspects to be truly liberated. It's not just about achieving this state of blissful emptiness, but also about embracing the dynamic, creative force that flows through all of existence.
So it's about finding that balance between stillness and activity, being and becoming.
Precisely. And as we move forward on this path, our understanding of the self undergoes a radical transformation. Instead of seeing ourselves as separate from the world, we start to realize that we are the very essence and foundation of all existence.
Wow, that's a lot to take in, but it's also incredibly freeing. If we are essentially one with the divine, with the Brahman, then we have access to this limitless source of wisdom, love, and power.
That's the beauty of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy. It's not just a bunch of abstract ideas. It's a pathway to realizing our full potential as human beings. And it's a path that's open to everyone, no matter their background or beliefs.
So what would you say are the key takeaways from all of this? What can our listeners do to start applying these ideas in their own life?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say cultivate a sense of curiosity and wonder. Don't just take these ideas at face value. Explore them. Experiment with different practices. Read Sri Aurobindo's work and see what speaks to you.
And remember, it's a journey, not a race. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your successes, and learn from those inevitable challenges.
And most importantly, don't forget to have fun with it. This journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth, it can be incredibly joyful and fulfilling. Allow yourself to be surprised and delighted by the unfolding of your own potential.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. I know I've learned a lot from this deep dive, and I hope our listeners have too.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the journey continues. The potential for transformation is always within you, waiting to be unleashed.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.